Okay, we are 31a, 10 lines down. Says the Gemara, Lechol kechetzi chazayis, ulahaktir kechetzi chazayis kosher. The end of our Mishnah said, person has a wrong intent to eat half an olive's worth outside, that half an olive's worth should be consumed. He's going to eat it outside the right time, outside the right place. And then half an olive's worth will be consumed by the altar. And the phraseology is used as lahaktir. So that's kosher, that's going to be fine. Those two phraseologies do not combine. Now, says the Gemara, time of the lechol lahaktir, but halechol lechol davar shein darko lechol mitzdarei. So what are you putting up on the altar? Well, one of the things you could be sacrificing is the sacrificial parts, the different limbs of the animal. So says the Gemara, if you're planning to have half an olive's worth of the korban and half an olive's worth of the sacrificial parts of the meat, and that should be consumed on the altar outside of the right time, so that's going to be invalid. But let's say you use the phraseology, they should be eaten outside the right time, and half an olive's worth should be eaten, and then half an olive's worth of that which would have been sacrificed. Instead of sacrificing it, you plan to eat it, so then that's something which is not usually eaten, but you're saying you are going to eat it. It sounds like that will combine for an invalidation, because only lechol ulahaktir doesn't combine, but lechol v'lechol, using that phraseology, then it sounds like whatever would be up on the altar, if you say you're going to consume it, that would combine. Morning, Jules. Good morning. So now, if that's true, that's going to cause an internal contradiction. Why? Because the beginning of our Mishnah said, it's only when you consume things that are usually consumed. Things that are usually sacrificed and are not usually eaten. So if you have in mind to eat that, that will not cause invalidation. It has to be normal. So hakatani reisha lechol eshidako lechol and sheindako lechol. Well, only things that are normal. Things that are not normally eaten is not going to be good. And the last part of our Mishnah implies that even something which is generally brought on the altar and not eaten, but if you have intent to eat it outside the right time, it's going to be invalid. So says the Gemara, okay, the latter part of our Mishnah, you have to say is Rabbi Eliezer. He holds that even things that are usually brought on the altar, if you have in mind to physically consume it, that'll still cause an invalidation. The Amar mechashven me'achilas adam achilas uzbech, or me'achilas uzbech me'achilas adam. Things that are usually eaten, you have in mind to be consumed by the altar. Things that are consumed by the altar, and you have in mind to eat them, that causes an invalidation. But that's only the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Where do we find his opinion? We had this a little bit earlier. It's not. The Mishnah says in, coming up soon, Hashochet es hazevach, one slaughters a sacrifice. Lechol davar shein darko lechol v'lahaktir davar shein darko lahaktir kasher. Rabbi Eliezer posel. The Mishnah later on explicitly states that there's a machlokes, two opinions. Eating something which is generally not eaten, or the altar will consume something which is generally not consumed. If you have those things in mind while doing one of the four services, does that render it pigul? Yes or no? First opinion says no, it's kosher. Second opinion, Rabbi Eliezer says it's posel. It does invalidate. Therefore, you have to say that the last phrase in our Mishnah is like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. We're up to Abaye Amar. Not there yet. We're almost there. The previous page. We're almost there. Abaye says no. You can even understand the latter part of our Mishnah to be going like the opinion of the rabbis. You don't have to pin it on. You don't have to pin it on Rabbi Eliezer. Why? We understood that the last part of the Mishnah said, if I have in mind during one of the services, half an olive's worth, I will eat outside the right time, and half an olive's worth the altar will consume outside the right time. That is still a valid sacrifice, because eating and consuming don't combine. Our assumption was eating and consuming doesn't combine, but eating and eating would combine. And therefore, anything which is sacrificed, if I would have in mind to eat it, it would combine to invalidate. which then made us say that our Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer. But now let's just change the implication a little bit. Abai Amar Fiu Tema Rabbanan Lo Tema Halechol V'Lechol Davar She'ein Darko Lechol Ela Ema Halechol V'Lechol Davar She'Darko Lechol. The Mishnah is going in the context of the beginning of the Mishnah, and therefore even the implication of the last sentence is, if you would say I would eat a half olive's worth and eat a half olive's worth, it's only talking about things that are generally eaten. Things that are not generally eaten are not going to disqualify, just like the beginning of the Mishnah says. So on that, the Gemara says, well, if we know that from the beginning of the Mishnah, so what's this sentence teaching me? My Kamash Malon. If you want to teach me that it's teaching me that I have to have in mind something which is normally eaten, only that invalid thought will render it pigul. Well, Kamash Mireisha Shmamina. I know that from the beginning of the Mishnah, as it says, sorry, but Kamash we know that from the beginning already. That only those things combined, half an olive's worth and half an olive's worth, outside the right place and outside the right time. But things that are not usually eaten, the Mishnah says there, the extension of the Mishnah, the continuation of the Mishnah says, is not going to be good. If you want to tell me ilechol ulahaktir, you want to tell me that eating and sacrificing does not combine, so midiyuka dereisha shmamina. I can also learn that out from the beginning part of the Mishnah, which only mentioned cases of eating and eating. It didn't mention cases of eating and consuming on the altar. So I would know from the omission of the first part of the Mishnah that if you have in mind to eat and have in mind to consume, those don't combine. So it must be lechol davar shedarko lechol in she'ein darko lechol lo. Yeah, the beginning of the Mishnah told us only things that are generally eaten will be susceptible to an invalidation of pigul. Things that are not generally eaten, rather consumed, don't get you pigul. So you know that already. So here, let's see. Hashta uma lechol v'lechol, just like eating and eating, meaning you have in mind half an olive's worth to eat and another half an olive's worth to eat outside the right time. And there we say, davar she'ein darko lechol lo mitzdaref, but the olive's worths have to be things that are generally eaten and not consumed. So then, if within the phraseology of eating and eating, we need things that are generally eaten, for sure, eating and consuming on the altar, that's much farther, that's much harder to combine. For sure, that's not going to combine. Lechol lahaktir miboyi. So the question is, what is this last line of the Mishnah telling us? That eating and consuming on the altar does not combine together. Half an olive's worth to eat outside the right time, and half an olive's worth to sacrifice do not combine to make pigul. Everything you're trying to tell me that it teaches me, I know from the beginning of the Mishnah already. So says the Gemara, no, can I teach you one novelty? The beginning of the Mishnah just told us when you're consuming food, to be liable for pigul, you have to have in mind that you're going to eat something outside the right time, which is generally eaten. Okay. So now we're asking, well, if those things, things that are not generally eaten, cannot combine, how could things that are eaten and sacrificed, it's like two totally separate things, how could they combine? The Gemara said a very logical thing. By eating, so what's the rule? You have to have in mind an olive's worth that's normally eaten. If you have in mind half an olive's worth that's normally eaten and half olive's worth that's not normally eaten, they do not combine. Now, when you have in mind half an olive's worth to be eaten and half an olive's worth to be sacrificed on the altar, you could have thought in their respective worlds, it's both normal. Eating half an olive's worth outside the right time is going to be, that's normal. Consuming half an olive's worth is normal. So maybe those could combine, which the Mishnah says they don't combine. So Yeah. Yeah. You need to teach you the novelty of the last part of the Mishnah. Why? You need to teach you this novelty because you would have thought there by the beginning of the Mishnah, the food that's not generally eaten, it's not the general way to eat it. That's why it doesn't combine. This olive worth, this olive amount, half an olive is usually eaten, and that half an olive's worth is usually sacrificed. So in each of their respective worlds, it's normal. So maybe they should combine together to invalidate. Kamash one says the Mishnah that no, eating and sacrificing does not combine. Only eating and eating combine. So at the end of the day, there are two opinions how to read the last part of our Mishnah, which validates somebody who says that eating and sacrificing should combine. Everyone agrees that they don't combine. The question is, what's the implication from that? Is the implication that something which is generally sacrificed, if I were to change my phraseology and I'm going to consume it, it would combine to make pigul? That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. The other opinion is that no, only if I have in mind to eat the olives worths that are generally eaten will they combine. But let's say the sacrificial limbs of the animal that are never eaten. If I have in mind half an olive's worth of that, even if I say achila, eating, that's not going to combine because that's not something which is generally eaten. Those are two opinions. Kamash one, Hadron, Allah, Kollel, Zevachim, Shekiblu, Dam. Good job. Learning only gets harder. So that's right. That's right. See, once you're eating, you don't have to think anymore. Only once you're performing the service. You get to the food, you can think whatever you want. Yeah. Okay. Call. Ask the JCC chefs what they think when they're making the food, you know? So, call absolutely. She did. Okay. Call absolute. All of the people that are invalid. Shishachtan, shchita sakshera. So people that are invalid for the services, if they do the slaughtering, it's going to be a good slaughtering. Now, the way it phrased it is, if they slaughtered, it is good. Seems to imply that ideally they should not slaughter, but if they do it, then it's good. We'll see if that holds water. But just the way you read it, yeah. So anybody who's invalid for the services can do a proper shchita. Why? Shehashchita ksher bazarim. Shchita is valid for a non-Kohen. We'll see. Is it ideal? Is it not ideal? We'll see. But uba nashim and women, uba abadim and for the non-Jewish slaves, evekanim. Uba tmeim, someone who's impure. Now, someone who's impure, it causes a little bit of difficulty because it depends on your status of impurity. Because if you're someone who's a very high level status of impurity, and now you touch the shchita knife, and now the knife becomes impure, when that knife touches the animal, you just impurified an animal. That's not allowed. So we have to be talking about either somebody who's a lower level of tumah, and therefore when he touches the knife does not become tameh, or you're using a knife which is not susceptible to tumah, such as a basic wooden knife. How exactly do you cut with? Yeah, you're touching the wooden knife, and I guess the blade is the blade, but what you're holding on to is wood. Wood's not going to be susceptible to tumah. Okay. Even the holy of holy sacrifices, a non-Kohen can slaughter it. Ubilvad shalo yutmein nogin bebasar. As long as the impure person doesn't touch the meat, that's not going to be good. So, since they could slaughter, the fikach came posting the machshava. Therefore, they can invalidate the service with their thought. Since there's no other invalidation here, therefore, if they have the wrong thought, it's going to invalidate. If they would be invalid to do the service, then you have already another invalidation. And that we said, Kibbul has to be the only show in town. Yeah. So the Kulan Shekibul Sadam and all the invalid people. If you would to accept the blood with the wrong intention, to eat it outside the right time or outside the right place, so what happens now? So that's not good because you're invalid to receive the blood. So since you're invalid to receive the blood, your invalid thought is nothing because it's not going to be piggle since you're invalid to receive the blood. It's only if you'd be valid to receive the blood can you invalidate it by having a bad thought. So what do you do? At the end of the day, you're invalid. So your receiving of the blood wasn't valid. What do you do? Im yesh dama nefesh yagzor hakosher v'yikabel. A kosher Kohen, a valid Kohen, should go back and receive the blood again. So if someone is impure and receives the blood, that's fine. Let another Kohen go who is pure, and he will receive the blood. As long as it's squirting out of the neck. You get the blood you need. Okay. Okay. Okay, some interesting cases. Kibel a kosher. So a kosher Kohen accepts the blood. V'nosam apostle. And he gives it to an invalid Kohen. Hey, buddy, take this. He's like, oh no, I'm tummy. No problem. Give it back. The Yagzil kosher. Fine. I mean, it's not going to invalidate it. Just the actual giving it to him doesn't invalidate. Sounds like even after you receive the blood, just the handing it to somebody is not like part of the essential service that will cause some invalidation or something like that. So, yeah. Kibel b'yamino, you accept in your right hand like you're supposed to, but then you put it to your left hand. What do? Put it back into your right hand. Yagzil yamino. Kibel b'kli kadesh, you accept the blood in a holy vessel, but also in the kli kol, and you put it into a mundane vessel. Yagzil kli kadesh. Put it back to the holy vessel. As we saw, nishpach min hakli, the blood actually spills out of the vessel. So not spills on the floor from the slaughtering, that's valid. It spills out of the vessel onto the ground. Gather it up. How do you gather up? What do you use? A straw? What do you do? You can't use your hands. A spoon, little
paper towel.
What, absorb it and
Then squeeze it out.
Squeeze it out. Oh, that was your question last time, right? How they use it, right? So, fine. That's that. Nas no gabe kavish. Instead of putting it on the altar where you're supposed to, you put the blood on the ramp up to the altar. Or you put it shlo keneged yisod. You put it on the wrong part of the altar, not corresponding to the base, not the part that's protruding. Or nas instead of putting it on top, you put it below. Instead of below, you put it on top. Inside blood sprinkled outside. Outside blood sprinkled inside. What's the rule? If there's still blood squirting out of the animal, I don't know how much time you have, right? I mean, it could be for a while.
What?
After you slaughter the animal, how long is the blood squirt out?
Oh.
It can't be an hour, right?
No, I can't imagine it being
10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, great.
You can have an alarm clock. You got 10 minutes. So maybe it's dripping down. Maybe it's dripping down. And how much blood do you need even? When you receive the blood, how much blood you have to receive? So no. Oh, I will tell you, Donna, that you had a question like a month ago, and I said, just wait, we'll find the answer hopefully. Do you have to just put your hands on the animal or lean on it with all your strength? So we're going to find out either end of today or tomorrow. That was your question, and it is answered later. So there's hope. Yeah. Okay. So shaktu. Okay. So first thing the Gemara picks up on is the phraseology. If you slaughtered it, it's good. So is that ideal or not ideal? Sounds like it's what we call a bidi evidence, post facto. You slaughtered it, it's valid. But don't do that ideally. If you go to the rabbi and say, should I slaughter it? He tells you no way. If you come and say, I did it already, is it valid? Yes. So shaktu v'yavid, that's the implication of our mission. The problem is it contradicts the following. V'raminu v'shachat shchita bazar. It says v'shachat. It says, and you slaughter. Shchita bazar, sheira. If you slaughter it, slaughtering. So, yeah. So the verse there, the 5th verse in the book of Leviticus, says, if you slaughter the animal, Lifnei Hashem, and then the sons of Aaron bring it close, bring the blood close. Sounds like they only come into play after it's been slaughtered, or they could come into play after it's slaughtered. That's the implication of the verse. Somebody slaughtered it. The sons of Aaron went and brought the blood closer. The sons of Aaron came. So sounds like they weren't the ones that shechted it. So the shachat, he shechted it. Shchita b'zar k'sheira. Shchita k'sheira b'zarim v'nashim avadim u'tmeim. Afilu b'katche kedashim. The shchita of a non-Kohen is kosher because the shchita is kosher with non-Kohanim, women, servants, impure people, even the holy of holy sacrifices. Oh, einu ela b'kohanim. Or maybe it's only with Kohanim. So it says the Gemara, Bechim ayin basa. Like, where are you coming from? Michlal shenamar v'ata b'necha itcha tishmeru es kunaschem. Where are you coming from that the Kohen should do the shechita also? In our verse, it seems to imply that anybody could do the shechita. It doesn't have to be a Kohen. Says the Gemara. There's another verse in the 18th chapter of Bamidbar that says that you, meaning Aaron's children, should guard your priestlyhood with everything revolving around the altar. Everything you would have thought, even slaughtering. Yachol af b'shchita. Talmud Lomer, our verse in Vayikra. The shachat is ben abakar lifnei Hashem v'hikrivu v'gomer. The gomer means ... but it means go look at the ... and the ... says that the children of Aaron are going to bring the blood, meaning. And until that point, someone else can do the slaughtering. Mikabala ve'elach. From the accepting the blood and onwards is where the Kohanim step in. Mitzvahs kahuna limeid ala shchita shekshera b'chol adam. So the mitzvahs kahuna, which takes place at the accepting of the blood and onwards, teaches us that the shchita, which preceded it, can be with anybody. So says the Gemara, even ideally, if your source is the verse, nothing in the verse implies it's post facto. V'shachat, he went and he slaughtered it. That's great. So he can go and slaughter it. Sorry, he can go and slaughter it, not after post facto. He slaughtered it already. It's good. So this Brisa who brings the pasuk implies ideally anybody could do it. It's not post facto like our Mishnah implies. So how do we answer our Mishnah? The Mishnah's implication of the wording is it's a post facto halacha. Once you slaughtered it, it's good. The Brisa brings the verse, seems to imply you can go and do it. Rabbi, can I check? Go for it. So I guess show me your certificate first, and then go for it. Yeah. Says the Gemara, why? Someone who's impure, he cannot ideally go and slaughter it. That is a special rabbinic prohibition that someone who's impure, even if he will not impurify now, meaning he's on a lower level of sanctity, that the knife won't become impure, but we made a restriction that he can't go slaughter because it's too close to impurifying the meat, and I think that's prohibited. So once in the Mishnah, we mentioned the case that lechatchila you cannot do it. So the formulation of the Mishnah, we just chose a language of post facto, because for the case of impure, it's a post facto, it only applies post facto. Therefore, for simplicity's sake, we use that phraseology. So Zera Shema Yigu Basar Tana Sheshachtu. Since by the person who's impure, we taught a language of post facto. Once you slaughtered it, it's good, because there's a decree upon the impure that we don't want them to touch the meat and impurify it. So therefore, when we came to slaughtering, we used the language of post facto, sheshachto. But don't think that that means that none of the people in the Mishnah could ideally go and slaughter. It was just one of the ways that Rebbe phrased the Mishnah. Sometimes he does things and with parallelisms, he leaves things out. He has certain reasons why he phrases things. It's easier for memorization. They used to sing the Mishnah to a tune. Different reasons why he phrases in certain ways. So we thought it was a real halachic teaching. You can't do it ideally. To which we end up saying, no, the Brisa says you could. He had a different reason why he taught it in that formulation. Yeah. There is somebody who says, I don't remember, one of the commentaries said that he on purpose would write the Mishnah in certain cryptic ways, because you're really not allowed to write down oral Torah. There's a special, what's it called? We allowed it, a special allowance, but you're not allowed to write down oral Torah. special allowance for him because he thought we're going to lose the whole Torah if you don't write it down. But even when he wrote it down, he didn't want to lose the oral transmission. So as soon as he wrote it down in certain cryptic ways, so you still have to go to your Rebbe and ask him, what does this mean? You have to discuss it with your friends. You don't lose that part of our tradition. Interesting. And he definitely succeeded, right? Like how much Gemara there is.
Yeah.
So you have to go to yeshiva, you have to understand, you have to learn. Daf Yomi. Yeah. So, okay. The Tameh, we just said that an impure person who slaughters the Avad, if he ends up doing it, it's fine. Shapir dam. What's the problem? The following brisa, Viraminu, Visamach, Vishachach. You lean on the animal and you slaughter the animal. So those are two verses that are juxtaposed to each other. Leaning on the animal and slaughtering the animal. Says the Gemara, the juxtaposition teaches you something. Just like leaning on the animal, it has to be done with someone who's pure, because you're touching the animal. So too, slaughtering should be done with somebody who is pure. So, says the Gemara, sounds like it has to be done with somebody who's pure. Says the Gemara, that's really midirabanan. I mean, it brings the verses, but it's really a rabbinic law that you have to do the slaughtering if you are pure. So it says, one second, how did you figure this out? Why is leaning biblically have to be done with a pure person, and slaughtering is only rabbinic? How'd you know that? What? How is smicha different? Because it says the lifnei Hashem. You have to be before God, and meaning you have to be inside the courtyard. An impure person can't go into the courtyard. So by definition, you exclude him. If lifnei Hashem, before God, means a specific place of inside a temple courtyard, so then that excludes a impure person. Says the Gemara, well, guess what? Shchita, it says before Hashem too, and you just told me that biblically it's allowed. How does that make any sense? So says the Gemara, no problem. After the Abed Sachan Arucha, a very long night. You're outside, you're impure, and the animal's inside. And this is a little bit of an introduction. We're going to get involved for like a daf and a half about what's considered entering. Is partial entering considered full entering or not entering? So we're going to get back to that point after we finish this problem. So V'shachet, says Smichanami, you can place your hands in after the Ma'ayel Yadeh, V'samech. You can place your hands in, and the assumption now is that if you're standing outside the courtyard and you're impure, and it's an impurity that does not impurify the knife and then doesn't impurify the animal, and you put your hands inside the courtyard, so that's not considered like an impure person has entered into the courtyard, and that would be allowed. So just like slaughtering, you could do with a long knife, why don't you just place your hands inside and put it on the animal? Says the Gemara. And here, this is where we're going to get, it's going to cause us have some fun. The following line, because Sabr, obviously this brisa holds, Bia b'miktas, Shmei Bia. Partial entering is akin to full entering. Yeah. I don't remember correctly. It's going back, I don't know, a while. But how do you understand that? Partial entering is full entering. Do you understand it that when the Torah says you can't enter, what it really meant was any part of you can't enter? Is that what it meant? And therefore, a little bit of entering is like full entering? Or no? The Torah meant really that you fully can't enter, but once part of your body has entered, we already view it like your whole body has entered. There are different practical differences I don't remember right now, but between those two. But it's interesting. When the Torah says you cannot enter, what did cannot entering mean? None of you can enter? Or no, all of you can't enter, just once part of you is there, it's already viewed like your other, like row. Once you have a majority, so it's already like the whole, right? So, yeah. One of the practical differences I remember right now was people touching the Western Wall, I believe. Some of the later Achronim. I don't think we go like this, but people, but there are people that are stringent. Partial touching is like I'm already in, I'm not pure. So, yeah, that was interesting. Okay. Either way, kasavar bia miktas shebia. Obviously, our brisa holds that standing outside and putting your hand inside ain't gonna help you because partial entering is like full entering, and therefore the fact that you're outside but your hands are inside, that's akin to you being inside. So that's why shchita you could use a long knife. You're on the outside, knife's on the inside. Your hands, though, you can't do that.
Low level.
It has to be obviously a tummy where you're not going to impurify the knife.
How do they know?
Oh, how do you know what level he is?
Yeah.
Well, meaning practically you ask the guy, he's like, oh, I just touched a corpse. Ooh, then no. But if you're already a rishon l'tuma, so you touched something which touched a corpse, so now I don't think you can impurify vessels, only food and drink, only people maybe, but not vessels. So I think if you're rishon l'tuma, then you'd be good. If you're avatuma, that's right. But you are making a good point. Meaning, what was their practical way of preventing impure people to enter? There must have had someone had to ask you, or we relied on everyone being, everyone being so sure of themselves. I don't know. The Kohanim themselves, the Gemara says many places, the Kohanim always says, Kohanim's reasoning. Now, the word zari is really used as alacrity. They were quick. That's not what it means. Rashi says every time that the Kohanim were people who were extremely scrupulous, right? Okay. About their mitzvah observance. They're very careful. I mean, that was the assumption. If you're a Kohen and you're coming in, the assumption is you're very, very, very careful. Now, everybody else, that's a good question. How do we prevent impure people from coming in? There's like a security checkpoint over there. No, there's that screen at the airport by security to go through it, and it senses. That's right, your TSA check, your pre-check. Yeah. That's interesting. There must be some.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want.
They had interesting. By the holidays, they would set up actually sounds like officers of sort to prevent mingling between men and women. So that they had. Yeah, it's brought down that they had. They actually established fast days after each holiday, 3 fast days, Monday, Thursday, Monday, that because of too much mingling was inappropriate. And nowadays, many yeshivas, many places actually still say slichot the first Monday, Thursday, Monday after the holidays. From that was 1,000 whatever. Yeah, the mirror said it. Yeah. Why you? Some said it, some didn't. Anyways, so okay, so that's that. Rav Chisda now. So this brisa teaches us that putting your hands in is considered like fully putting it in, and therefore, biblically, a tamei person can't do it. But shchita, slaughtering, you can use a long knife. Fine. Says Rav Chisda, I taught the opposite way. V'samach v'shachat. So we're comparing now the other way. Shchita to smicha, not smicha to shchita, not leaning to slaughtering, slaughtering back to leaning. So, ma shchita b'tehorim. Shchita has to be done with only if you're pure. So to smicha has to be done only if you're pure. How do I know? Ma'ishna shchita d'chsib. By shchita it says lifnei Hashem. That be before Hashem. Turn the page. Smicha nami ksiv lifnei Hashem. Leaning has to be also before Hashem. So says the Gemara, why don't you stand on the outside and put your hands in? Just put your hands on the outside and put them in. So then says the Gemara, okay, the shchita nami after the avid sakin arucha v'shachit. Then by the knife also you can put a knife. You could have an impure person use a long knife and slaughter. So how come you Rav Chisda require that the slaughtering has to be in the courtyard? And so to the leaning you can stand outside and put your hands inside. Shchita also you can stand outside and use a long knife. Says the Gemara, Hamani Shimon HaTimni. Because we're going like Shimon HaTimni, who says the following, the Tanya. It's like a story within a story, It's a brisa proving from another brisa. The Tanya, he learns that pasuk in Leviticus in Vayikra, the 5th pasuk, it says, "V'shachat has been a bakar lifnei Hashem." Oh, you have to slaughter it in front of Hashem. V'lo hashochet lifnei Hashem. The animal has to be in the presence of God in the courtyard, but not the slaughterer. But Shimon HaTimni Omer, no. Minayin sheyu yadav shel shochet lifnin min hanishcha. Interesting. Special requirement that the hands of the slaughterer have to be closer than the animal being slaughtered. Therefore, you can't be on the outside and in on the inside. You have to be closer in than the animal itself. Tamalomar v'shachat as ben abakar lefnei Hashem, shochet as ben abakar yeh lefnei Hashem. The shochet, the one who's slaughtering, he has to be lifnei Hashem. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, Amar Ula, Amar Reish Lakish, said Ula name Reish Lakish. Here's this whole, yeah. Tamei shehichnis yadu lifnim loke. An impure person who puts his hand inside the courtyard, whack it. We get malchus. Yeah, we get malchus. Shenamar b'chol kodesh lo sigo. That a person cannot touch. Impure person can't touch. Talking about a lady who just gave birth, who's impure, she can't touch things that are holy. So, but the end of the verse says, it says, "B'chol kodesh lo siga," you can't touch things that are holy. Be'el hamikdash lo savo, and she cannot enter into the temple. So the verse itself compares touching to entering to touching. Makish bil and negia. Ma negia b'mikdash shmei negia. When you touch something a little bit, it's called touching. Yeah. So every when I was in high school, every high schooler's favorite question when you had to ask the rabbi session, why can't we just high five them? Right? That was like the, that was always the question. Yeah. So okay. So afbia, so to entering a little bit is considered entering. Afbia b'mitzvah shmei. Even partial entering is considered entering. Therefore, a tamei person who puts his hand inside the courtyard gets malchus. Now here comes a. If it wasn't exciting enough, so a mitzora on the 8th day goes through a purification process where he has to put his hands inside, and the Kohen sprinkles blood on his right thumb and his toe and his right toe and his ear. Now he. So we'll see in a second. So let's say, just for making it more exciting, that his 8th day of his purity fell out none other than Erev Pesach. Right? Very nice wife. She's making Pesach for him, and he's Mitzorah. He wasn't around for a week, so he's back. And his 8th day falls out on Erev Pesach. Now, happens to be that day. What happened? Unfortunate events. The Ra carried Baba Yom. He saw on a mission, which made him impure. But don't worry, Rachel's well. He went to Tavel, and he went to the mikvah. So now, a Tvul Yom is someone who went to the mikvah, who's waiting for sunset. So he cannot enter into the courtyard. So he cannot enter. But says the Gemara, the Chachamim say, Amru Chachamim, Afal pi she'ein Tvul Yom acher nichnas, will never allow another Tvul Yom to enter into the courtyard, but zen nichnas. But this one we're going to allow. Why? Yeah. Now, yeah. Why? Because what's the other option? Don't let him in. What's going to happen? He won't be able to eat the Korban Pesach. Not eating Korban Pesach gets a person kares. Entering into the courtyard is less strict. It says the Gemara. So Yavo Aseh Sheyesh Bo Kares, comes the positive commandment, which if you don't do it, gets you kares. Ve'yidche, and it pushes aside Aseh She'ein Bo Kares. It'll push aside the positive commandment, which does not get you kares, which is send the impure people outside the temple. Get them out of here. That's a positive command to get them out of here, okay? But the other positive commandment that you must eat the Pesach, and if not, you get kares, is stricter. So the one positive can push away another positive. That is the opinion of the Chachamim. 642. Okay, let's stop here.